I'm going to take us to the land of tech giants and a recent report from the Wall Street Journal that showed that they're accelerating the race to buy up renewable energy, and specifically to show that they're not just kind of sucking renewable energy out of the grid, but actually adding it, and not just sort of moving emissions around, but adding to the overall pool of renewable energy. So I thought this was interesting in the sense of the conversation around Bitcoin and the environment, and particularly because I think it goes back to where we assign value, right? Like, is Amazon a valuable company in terms of the services it provides when you contrast that with what it pays workers, you know, people having to urinate in water bottles because they're worried about being fired for missing shifts, and a host of other concerns, not to mention tax issues. But I'll toss this to you, Naomi, for some of the energy questions, but I wanted to hold these things up kind of side by side because I think they are part of the same overall conversation.
Well, I mean, I think there's just such a push right now. All of the conversation in the media is around Bitcoin, renewable energies, all of that. You know, there's big scourge on the environment that they think Bitcoin is. Whether or not that is accurate, there's a lot of pushback against that. There's a lot of renewable energy used in the crypto space, but it doesn't surprise me that all of these big tech companies are jumping on this bandwagon and using this as part of their PR machine to say, look at all the stuff that we're doing. You know, how much they're concerned about this, I'm not sure, but they're definitely concerned about the image and definitely concerned about the public perception and all of this. And so it's interesting that they're all kind of jumping on this bandwagon. But I'll throw this to Zach.
Waste coal. Waste coal is the answer. We need to get Jeff Bezos on the waste coal train. I'm still fascinated by waste coal from yesterday's show. I still think there's a lot of questions to be asked about that. So I'm gonna have to dig into that a little bit more and see if it's really an energy alternative that's not so dirty. I think the ESG conversation is certainly ramping up, and this is just another part of that conversation. I think it is actually serves the narrative interests of the Bitcoin people to see these conversations being applied more broadly to other sectors of the economy, right? If we're going to talk about what is worthwhile energy to be consuming, it certainly should apply in conversation to Bitcoin as it should apply in conversation to other technologies and the companies that promulgate them. So the fact that this conversation is playing out perhaps a bit more even-handedly across sectors could be interesting, but to me, again, another data point that ESG is real and is not going anywhere, and it's something that whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's Ethereum, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Apple, whether it's Google, everyone is being faced with these questions and seemingly is taking them quite seriously in deciding how to act. I'll throw this up to Will. I saw his hand up, and then Ben, I think you had something as well.
Yeah, I'll just say something to make Naomi smile today. I think in the ESG question, it's interesting, like a lot of people say it's like PR and pivoting and marketing and whatnot. But I think like this is how normal market cycles work. And it's better to have this than then the government reaching in, like forcing everyone to change whatever energy sources they use. Like the fact that these corporations or even smaller companies are like purposely choosing what energy to use just based on what their consumers' preferences, and I think is like a net positive for every company, as opposed to just having like regulators come in and say like you need to start making these changes necessarily like right now. But Jen, I saw your hand go up, so I'll throw it to you.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to take a page out of your book, Will, and say maybe these companies just like money. I think there's a lot of investor pressure right now
It's Ben's book. That's not mine.
To focus on ESG, and there's a lot of consumer pressure now too. That I think is being amplified by the Bitcoin news. So I think these companies don't really have a choice. If they want investor funds, they need to show that they're focusing on environmental issues. And if they want people to buy their products, they need to do the same. But Ben, I know we don't have a lot of time left, so kicking it over to you.
No. And I want to say, like, this is overall a net good, I think, for everybody. Like, let's be quite clear. The reason we're concerned about the environment is because climate change is real and accelerating, and we need to do everything we can to tamp down on global emissions to prevent catastrophic results. Like, that's the reason we care about this overall. And, I don't want to paint this as it's bad that 10 companies are doing this. I think it's good. I just think it's a allocation of resources and framing, and looking how we're comparing all these things is really important when we're considering the world we want to live in and on. But I also think that, Will, to your point, it's an interesting market dynamic playing out in the sense that, in this piece, they talked about the fact that in some companies, like private companies are bigger subsidizers of renewable energy than governments themselves. And I think, that's an interesting pivot from what we've seen. I think that reflects positively maybe for the Bitcoin market as well, and the mining market, in terms of going where energy is not only cheap, but also as market mechanisms push people towards renewables as part of maybe this larger ESG concern. So overall, this is definitely a net negative. And I'm really curious to see, because part of the debate around the environment is that, and at least with Bitcoin, is that, there is no more renewable energy on the grid. We're all just kind of sucking, what's existing there is like, these deals that these tech companies are signing are with the goal of like adding more renewables to the grid. And I'm curious to see, if Bitcoin maybe like and miners venture down that route as well and buy, energy at a sustained rate for a long period of time, such that it's not just, taking a slice of the pie, but potentially adding to it in a positive way.